The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.
What's going on, guys? How are you? This is Nick Caligari-Michels with the Paper Trails podcast, and we are back with episode 3 of season 2. And this is a first for us. I cannot wait. This is a Zoom. Obviously, if you guys have been following our podcast, you guys have seen, the growth that we've had. We had 30 episodes in the first season, and we're a couple episodes in season 2. But this is a first for Paper Trails, where we are actually interviewing Jason Thomas with Healthy Brand Oil. They are actually a vendor of mine. For you guys that may not know, I own a paper disposable business that I run during the day. And then we also have a little bit of some food, more kind of, dry, non-perishable items, frying oil, sugar, a couple of things like that. And actually, Jason, just so you know how I even got into oil, this is how it worked because, 12 years ago, whenever we started the business, and I started doing sales, I started going into restaurants and obviously looking for the napkins and the cups and the pizza boxes and, things like that. And everybody would have the same jugs of oil in the restaurant. Everybody. It would be a 35-pound with the handle, little plastic. And I was like, and I'll talk to my cousin, my business partner, my cousin John, and, I do more of the sales. He does more of the warehouse, purchasing, things like that. And I was like, John, we have to, these people are ordering 5, 10, 12, 15, in some cases, jugs of oil a week. What if we were able to make $1 on a jug? I mean, this is an extra, we're already going to these restaurants. So essentially, Jason, that's kind of how we started to bring your products in. But I'm super pumped to have Jason on the podcast. We met through our mutual friend, our broker, Jeff Laurie, who we had Jeff on the podcast last season and had a chance to just get a different perspective of the food business. Jason, just so you get some better context, our podcast is all about entrepreneurship, business ownership, and the food industry. That's what we're involved in. It's what the industry I grew up in. And I think bringing on, our first episode had a local farmer. It just got released a couple of days ago that sells organic carrots, celery, spring mix to the local restaurants. And so we're bringing in different people this season that are involved in the food business, but maybe not as directly as people would think. And so, anyways, Jeff, who is our broker, who's our kind of liaison between Healthy Brand and us, was talking to me about being on the phone with you, making deals. There's a lot of kind of fluctuation in the market. And I was like, tell me more about this Jason guy. Who is this guy, Jeff? And he's like, man, this guy's the real deal. They've built a solid company. They're big enough to kind of play with the big boys, but they're small and nimble enough to actually create blends. And and I'm, very ignorant to the oil. I mean, I know a little bit about the oil business. And so anyway, I was like, you know what? Why don't you ask him to come on? I'd love to have him on. He's like, well, he's in New York. How do you feel about that? I'm like, well, we do have Zoom. We do have different. And so, Jason, I'm super pumped to have you on. I can't wait to hang with you, learn from you, and just kind of jam a little bit and talk about business and the industry and how you built your company. And, because, that's kind of who we're talking to. We're talking to the entrepreneur. We're talking to the budding business owner, or even maybe somebody that just wants to become elite top level in their industry, right? Maybe, a lot of times being the number 5 person at Facebook is better than being the number 1 person, right? You don't have a lot of the stress and stuff like that, but you're still up there. You're still, making an impact. You're still getting paid, all that stuff. So anyway, let's do this. Jason, let's start with a little intro. Give us your background, where you're from, maybe even how you got into the oil business. How does somebody even enter, your industry or even consider it? So, maybe you can give some insight to your background.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. Thanks a bunch for having me. Love what you're doing here, and really an honored to be part of it. So I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York, in a small town called Medina, and then made my way. Went to college actually down your way for a year at Wingate University,
Okay.
and then finished my last 3 years at West Virginia University. Moved home that summer and didn't have too much of a game plan other than, started looking for jobs. Connected with a company down here in New York City that was selling sports hospitality packages, and I had a sport management degree. And didn't know anyone, didn't have a place to stay, and loaded up my car and lived in a hotel for 2 weeks and said, let's give it a go. And that was the summer of 2000. And knock on wood, we, been able to kind of, carve out a little life for myself down here outside the city in Queens and Long Island. So spent about a year there. Kind of coincided with some of the .com boosts where people really weren't looking to, spend thousands of dollars, taking their clients to the Final Four. And was doing some kind of spot gigs and side hustles to pay the bills. And a roommate of mine had gotten a job with a company called Bunzl, a large paper distributor. I had some interviews there, and they wound up not wanting to hire me because we were roommates at the time. But they did connect me with my current partner, who I've now been with for 20 years here this May. And so everything kind of, shook out for the best. But at the time, he had a paper brokerage selling products that, I'm sure your company deals in every day, paper bags and meat trays and disposable aluminum containers. And, we started doing that and doing pretty well. And just like you, everywhere we went in had cases and cases of edible oil. And we said, this seems to be a very interesting business that pretty much all of our customers, even on the paper side, were involved in some way. So we started by actually representing a packer of edible oils who set up a very large facility over in New Jersey, fully automated, 50,000 square feet. They were going to, kind of take on the world. I don't think they made it more than 2 or 3 months because they had failed to calculate the capital needs on the oil side, just sourcing the oil. So they quickly ran out of money. And, we had gotten a taste now and said, geez, selling 35-pound soybean oil, if you got a decent price, is something we'd like to do some more of. So, we went out, we found an investor who, had owned his own plastics company and was looking to get back into business in some way. We found a little facility here in Queens. Literally, there'll probably be a wrecking ball hitting it here, in the coming months. It's an old freight house, 100 years old, probably due for demolition sometime in the next couple of years, I would guess. And we started packing oil there. And the old joke is, the first rail car pulled up and we stared at it for 2 or 3 weeks and, slowly but surely packed it off and sold it. And, next thing, a year or two down the road, we started actually, turning a couple of rail cars a week, and the thing started turning into kind of a from a side project to, more of a real business. And that was 2004 of November. So, it's come a long way since then, but we feel like we're just getting started as well.
That's awesome. I mean, so let me unpack a lot of that because you went a lot. Okay, so you had no intention of starting or getting into this business. It was literally coincidental. You were selling paper products like we are.
Yep.
And then you found a local supplier that just supplied you, edible oil to sell to your clients. And then they went out of business. And then you were like, hey, what's going on here? Like, hey, like you have this equipment, you're just not properly funded, right?
Yeah, they, it was a very simple kind of operation. Even though they had a lot of the equipment to be automated, it was really one product. It was 35-pound soybean oil. I'm sure they had plans to do, other products past that, but as you're familiar, you can go into a lot of distributors here locally, especially in the ethnic trade and the Chinese markets. I mean, you got guys taking a truck a day of soybean oil. So, we had homes, we had relationships, we had places to go sell it, right out of the go. So, it seemed like a great opportunity, the little we understood of it to looking backwards, right? And so, it was great to partner. We felt like we had, a new entry into the market, and the market really needed, a new supplier for a number of different reasons. But, unfortunately, they didn't quite, have a game plan that allowed for, them to continue operations, and their business their equipment and location all just kind of evaporated into, equipment land. So we were standing there now knowing, a little more about the business and, even more intrigued than we were, when we had started. So yeah, unconventional, I guess, to say the least.
Do you remember like the conversation that maybe you and your partner had about like, hey, should we just take over this? I mean, like, do you remember that conversation? Was it like, or, I mean, how did that even happen? How did that even like, were you just like, hey, let's just buy this guy out? Like, how did that even happen?
No, so the first company that was in New Jersey wound up just completely like evaporating kind of overnight. The partner that we brought in early on, went and kind of said, hey, I'm interested in potentially investing, but the person did not want to, really even negotiate. And so it was just something that was almost untouchable. So when that kind of opportunity went away, we had reached out to somebody locally who was doing a little packing for us. And then I randomly was at a customer one day and was trying to, sell him some oil. And he said, oh, you should contact this gentleman. His name is Steve Mayman. And he has a packing facility in Long Island City. And so I gave him a call. We went over and we looked at his facility, and he had a machine, he had a tank, he had a forklift, he had no oil because he had no money, and really, no kind of business plan to make it operational. So we paid for some oil to come into his facility and have him pack it off for us. And that, went okay. But we saw quickly that in order to make a go of it, we would need to remove him from the process. So that's kind of how it unfolded.
Gotcha. Okay. I thought that first company in New Jersey was the one that you ended up.
No.
Oh, that's a different one. Okay. Well, listen, there's a story in itself about the power of networking and meeting people. When people give you numbers, call them immediately. Don't hesitate. Go introduce yourself. I mean, I think there's a big lesson there, for anybody listening, that, don't, I mean, you never know where relationships may lead. You never know.
100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it may be, it may lead to nothing. It may be your next best friend. It may be your business partner. I mean, who knows? So, okay. I like that. So you ended up, talking to Steve, and then do you remember the conversation you had with your business partner about taking over Steve's business, packing business? I mean, was that like, do you remember saying like, hey, this isn't, we need to start doing this ourselves? Like, did you in your mind ever fathom you would ever get where you're at? Or was it just like, hey, let's take over because we see this guy maybe can't keep up, and like, just to have oil for us? I don't know. Like, did you ever think it would be a whole entity in itself, or maybe just you would stay in the paper business? I know, by the way, we would have some contacts and some supply here.
I think at the time we saw a lot of opportunity in the space, and positionally in New York, a lot of the main suppliers are across the river into New Jersey. Some of them maybe as close as 10, 15 miles away, but in New York terms, that could be an hour and a half, drive. So, there was kind of an underserved, market here, let's call it from Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn over to Long Island. that at the time was not getting deliveries, hated their suppliers, but needed to deal with them because of some brands that they had, or there just weren't any other options. So we got a sense for that very quickly, and felt confidently that we could add some value. And then from there, I think we always, say here 17 years later, always thought that there was big places for the company to go, and we're very proud of where it's at. But the truth is, we're what I would call a sizable company, but versus some of the folks we compete with, we're running a facility that may pack 25% of the oil that an ADM packs or a Cargill packs. So, there's still a lot of room out there, and with the right, offerings and differentiations, we feel that, we can grow into something of that scale. So.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll take them down, just
give us some time. one pound at a time, Nick, right? It doesn't happen overnight.
That's the competitor in me. So anyway,
yeah.
Well, cool. Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about this. Let's talk about the actual product. How does, for the viewer that just is learning more about edible oil or frying oil, how does it end up in a, for the regular consumer, a bottle of oil in the store? Is it, most likely, is it canola oil that's always sold, or vegetable oil that's always sold in the grocery stores?
Yeah, so typically there'll be three main, what I'll call commodity offerings. There'll be vegetable oil in the retail space, which will be typically soybean or canola. And then canola is kind of sold labeled as canola, and then corn oil would be the third. Typically soybean oil is the cheapest, so that's what you see, ending up in vegetable oil, although, canola oil can also fill that bill as well. All very similar in nature, all kind of taste and flavor neutral. And, there's some slight differentiations, but functionally, they're very similar products.
Okay. So for the average viewer, myself, to be quite honest with you, how does that process work from a soybean on a farm? I don't want to what's the word? Anyway, I don't want to just say it, but in the Midwest, probably somewhere, farm in the Midwest. How does that end up as oil? How did maybe tell us the process, how it ends up from an actual plant to actual in a jug, whether it's in a restaurant in bulk or a bottle at a grocery store at a retail center.
So let's take soybeans. They may be the simplest one to kind of understand how the process works. Large crushers will source soybeans from farmers. They will bring them in, and they will first do what's called crush them. Most of that is done chemically. It's not actually a physical crush. They use chemicals to separate the oil and the fat, the fat and the protein. So think of that as the fat being the oil, and the protein being what is then meal, which mostly goes into animal feed. So what you have at that point is crude soybean oil and soybean meal. The meal is either exported or sold to people feeding chickens or hogs mostly. And then from there, the crude soybean oil will go through a refining process. And at that point, it's called refined, bleached, and deodorized. They remove the chemicals that were involved in the extraction. They will make it flavor and taste neutral, and really make it food grade, a food grade product out of it. And so from there, these byproducts are sold, like I said, meal to animal feeders, but oil it either goes into the food channel, or more and more it ends up going into what's called biodiesel. So just like corn, that you'll see 10% ethanol, which comes from corn, In diesel, they blend in different varieties of soybean oil. Different varieties meaning in the refining process, you go from the crude all the way to the RBD. Different plants can use different versions, but it more and more, and it's becoming a much bigger topic right now because of so much capacity is being added. It ends up in the gas tank or the diesel tank of trucks around the country.
Interesting. I would have not have guessed that.
Yeah.
So
and it's actually the needle moving demand right now. The food business is mostly constant. You have year over year growth, and depending on kind of global markets for canola and palm oils, you can see some shifts. But by and large, the food usage is known. The biodiesel usage, though, is something that is continuing to grow, and I would say the most aligned to really suck a lot of the soybean oil out of the pipeline as it's ever been. That's a combination of capacity that's been or being built, and number one, and then number two, the incentives that are in place from a taxation and what's called a blender's credit. All the pieces are really in the puzzle right now for that industry to make a major impact in the soybean oil markets. Part of that, you can see reflected in the current price, which is, basically doubled since this time last year.
Interesting. So you're seeing, for biodiesel, for people that maybe don't know, is pretty much a natural form of diesel so trucks can run, correct?
Yeah, it's and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because you'll get a lot of differentiating opinions, but essentially the bet that the government has made is that burning soybean oil is one, renewable, and two, cleaner burning.
Gotcha.
So it's a better alternative than just running the crude oil version of diesel. And we see the same thing in ethanol. There's some advantages there, on the corn side, where we're just seeing more and more of these products used in our gas tanks.
Yeah. So, I don't know much about biodiesel. I just know my best friend and my roommate in college got into it maybe like 8 years ago. He had an Excursion, it's like a 6.7 liter, like V8. It was a massive, truck, and he was into biodiesel for like 6 months and then stopped. He got out of it. But he nonstop talked about it, and I was like, all right, man, all right, But okay, interesting. So let's dive into maybe you mentioned it already, price fluctuations. It sounds like, okay, so from maybe the consumer that doesn't know, or maybe there's some owners listening that do know. Like you said, over the last, has it been year, maybe that the price of oil has probably doubled? Is that right?
Yeah. Basically, that's about right. We saw the big sell-off that everything, really, from the stock market to other commodities last March, April timeframe with COVID, and then we slowly just started kind of grinding higher. We came into 2020 having abundance of soybean stocks, plenty of product to go around, and slowly but surely we had kind of a less than great crop here in North America in 2020, and at the same time, because of the COVID issues around the world, other countries were saying, we've got a lot of problems here. We can't run out of food. We need to go from just-in-time inventory on these major grain products to building some inventory because of all these supply disruptions. So you saw China come in and really just, I think they set a record in 2020 for their soybean, purchases from the U.S. But other countries around the world as well. They wanted to increase the agricultural products that they had on hand, because they can't let on top of COVID, on top of all these other issues, they can't also then let their population go hungry. So there were some major moves when we saw these low prices. Buyers from around the world stepped in and said, it's time to refill the bins and make sure that we take supply disruptions off the table, starvation off the table for our people, and they really backed the truck up. So on top of that, you had, like I said, not a great crop in 2020, or let's say less than anticipated. So we went from swimming in soybeans to essentially right now having none. So quite a sea change, which can happen in these commodity markets. And then you throw on the biodiesel component to the oil side of things. And it's almost like a perfect storm right now for, sourcing a lot of products. I'm sure you're seeing it on a lot of plastics and paper. It really is a tough environment to get your hands on physical goods.
Yeah, I mean, just to, I'm sure you hear from your business partner, but 12 years of having our business. I mean, the last 4 months, we've never seen so many increases from everything, every part of the industry. 4 or 5 months now, there's been some major increases. So interesting. Now, I guess I'm just curious for myself, Jason, when you started seeing other countries start buying a lot of product, soybean, I mean, I don't know, what was your initial reaction to that? Like, did you really think that it was a starvation thing, or do you think that, I guess I'm just curious now, like, not that I'm a conspiracy person, but I mean, is that really the reason there was so much purchasing? Like, what was the, I'm sure that maybe threw you off a little bit too, right? Kind of seeing what was happening.
Yeah, it kind of happens incrementally. Everyone doesn't just run in and buy at the same time, but you start seeing purchases that make you say, that's an interesting purchase. I'll give you an example. India is the world's largest importer of vegetable oils in the world. And they made a purchase, I'm going to say in or around August of last year, shooting from the hip there. But at a time when soybean oil had kind of just broken out of a pretty well-defined trading range and was more, what I would call toward, 3, 4, 5-year highs. And what I said to customers was, if the world's largest buyer, importer of vegetable oils is making a buy at 3 and 4 year highs, that should say something to you. That should say that I don't think I have more information than India, a country of 1 billion people, who's really, the foundation of their government's existence may revolve around making sure their people are fed. That was one that really made me raise an eyebrow, and I tried to communicate that to our customers to say there might be something cooking here.
No pun intended there with the cooking.
Yeah, exactly. There's something frying, as we say here, Nick.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, and India is becoming like an up and coming nation too, right? Like, I mean, from what I know, I mean, I know that they're putting a lot of money into education and infrastructure, and that they really want to be a player up there in the game. So interesting. Okay, I just was curious more than anything, just to see like if your eyebrows were getting raised a little bit of like, okay, what's happening here? Okay, so major disruption, supply and demand seems like it's one of them. And then obviously other industries that are using the product as well, these natural resources with soybeans. And so let's talk about maybe your company, so what for people that are maybe listening, what do you guys offer? What do you guys do? How are you different? I know that you said that, or from what Jeff explained to me, that you guys, obviously carry your weight and know what you're talking about. And by the way, just so you know, last night when I was doing a little kind of due diligence, I had no idea the chemistry involved in what's happening in oil. Like, I watched a couple of videos and it's like polymers and this and convection, and I mean frying some chicken, and I was looking at some of your social media. I'm like this could be a technical actual product. I did not realize the the detail that it takes, you know what I mean? I guess my mind was just so simple. Like, you just, in my mind, squeeze a soybean, turns into oil. You just pack it in this jug and then ship it. But it's a lot more than that, right?
Yeah, 100%. It really is. The act, at least if we're talking about frying, is a chemical, is chemistry, as I call it. Yeah, there's a video on my LinkedIn, and I think our company's LinkedIn, that kind of goes through this. But you really need, you can take the best food, that you want to buy. If you're putting it into an oil that is not, kind of chemically ready to do what you need it to do, your results are not going to be where you want them. So, on our frying side, well, we got started with all the commodity oils, the soybeans, the canola fries, and those are fine solutions, and they're what I would call low price but high cost items. You put them in the fryer. People typically change them, very quickly. The price is low, but you end up having to constantly, change the oil out. What we are doing more and more, though, and seeing, especially at a time where prices are rising, is end users saying, my case of oil that used to cost me $20 is now costing me $35 or $40. I need to take a look at this and see, is there a solution that's more efficient? And there are. The main products in that space are what's called high oleic oils. There's a sunflower version, there's a soybean oil version, and there's a canola version. But all of them basically have been developed to give us a more stable oil. And what we're talking about is probably 2 to 3 times the stability of a regular soybean oil. So, and why stability is the whole key to the frying game, is because when you drop food into a fryer, if you do it into oil that is not stable, the product starts absorbing the oil. Okay, so what you don't get is that crispy outside, and the inside is now filled with oil that it shouldn't be if you had stable oil. So you drop that same piece of food into, something that is stable, and it will instantly almost like flash cook that outside, giving you that crispiness while the inside steams. And what that's going to give you better food quality. Less oil is going in the food and onto the consumer's plate, so you're not topping off the fryer, and you're changing your oil 2 to 3 times less than you would with the inferior products. There's also some other added benefits like higher monosaturated makeup in the fat makeup, where regular soybean oil is very high in polyunsaturated. High oleic is more on par with an extra virgin olive oil, and it's a healthier product. High in monounsaturated fats. It's this is straight from the health experts around the world. Monounsaturated fats are healthier than poly. So it gives you a lot of extra benefits to what you're doing, but the economics first and foremost are just better by making sure that you're using the right product. And it's very impactful, and it's often overlooked for a lot of operators, I feel.
So is that something that, you would, obviously to each his own, I get it, but if you were talking to a restaurant owner right now and you're just talking to them, you would tell them to consider high oleic
Yes.
oil? So you would tell them to consider having a high oleic oil?
100%. We like to look at this part of an operator's, how they should view this oil piece and their fryer in a couple pieces. One, get something that's going to deliver good quality food, right? Because if you don't have that, the customers are not going to come back. Secondarily, let's get something that's the most that has the lowest cost of use, right? As we said before, soybean oil Regular soybean oil is the lowest price but the highest cost. High oleic soybean oil has a much higher price but a much lower cost. And then look at taking opportunities that the market gives us to forward book the right solution. And how I like to think about it is, the big guys like a McDonald's or something like that, they basically have two objectives. That is, keep the menu board pricing low and profits high. And if locking in price and supply of something like your cooking oil today for forward use allows you to achieve those two objectives, then to me it's really a no-brainer, right? We can talk about where the markets are going. I can give you a half-hour opinion on what's happening there and what I think is going to happen. No one really knows for sure. No one knew that COVID was going to hit and basically, send those markets down 30, 40, 50%. And no one knew on the backside of it, we'd be, doubling from there. So the opinions about where the market goes are great, and we're happy to provide them. But we like to work with operators and say, let's take a more risk management approach. And let's try to keep your input costs low, which allows you to keep your pricing competitive, provide good food quality, and make sure the supply and the cost structure is in place out into the foreseeable future. So it's a little different methodology, I guess, than I think most people who would work with the operators would have, but we think it's the right one, and we think anytime that you can achieve those objectives, you're well ahead of the game.
Yeah, just let me say a couple of things. First, I'd love to tell the audience that the one thing that has impressed me the most about not only the broker that you chose here in the Carolinas with is it BOA that Jeff
BNA, yep, BNA, yep,
BNA, and then you guys, is the level of communication that you give us as suppliers is really high. Just to be honest with you, I don't see. I mean, we get regular emails from Jeff as far as what's happening in the market. I mean, that is very impressive. Just so you know, and I'm not just saying that just to blow smoke at you. I mean,
thank you.
Like it's very impressive. Number two. Just like your suggestion, I would highly recommend all operators, like you're talking about, because it's really easy to get comfortable in what you're doing, right? Like you think, you're buying this basic commodity oil. It is what it is. You know what? There's different products. Try them out. Test them out. Put them in a fryer and put your product in there and see how it comes out, and then see how long it lasts. I mean, I think it's. And that's to anybody, to be quite honest with you. Challenge your comfort zone, challenge the routine that you have. So that's a second thing that I'd love to just say. Any thoughts on that, as far as talking to the operator about maybe stepping out of maybe what you're comfortable doing and see what else is available?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about some of the things happening in the soybean market, and you could say, well, okay, that just affects my price of oil. But I would push back and say, no, it affects pretty much a lot of your major inputs. As I said, the grains are either are making oil, but the byproduct is also animal feed. So that's going to play into your meat costs. It may be feeding dairy cows, which goes into milk and cheese. There's a cascading effect to many of the products that you're using, every day, especially, in the commodity space. And what we see a lot is when we have these period of low prices and low volatility, which, we can look at a chart of soybean oil from 2015 to, basically 2020. And all right, it's a couple bucks either way for a case of oil, right? And you get lulled to sleep thinking that's how it's going to be, because that's how it's been for 5 years. But when these markets change their kind of configuration, we can see prices double and maybe even triple. And so it's important to not get, I know everybody's reopening and everybody's got a lot on their plate. Business is predicted to be great. And everyone's going to be chasing their tail probably to accomplish a lot of that. But really take a look at your input costs, because we are in kind of uncharted waters in a lot of ways in these commodity markets. And, while the price of oil has doubled, I don't have a crystal ball, but we still have a major supply issue with edible oils in this country. So can it go higher? It absolutely can. In 2008, the futures price went to 72 cents. We're currently trading around 52 cents. So, that's another, 20 cents a pound or $7-8 a case. If we were to go there, we could sell off as well. Yeah. But the important thing here is that these the current state of the commodity markets, to me, are unlike. We're running some kind of experience from a macroeconomic environment that we've never done. With all this money printing, stimulating of the economy. We're in unprecedented times here, and I would say don't get lulled into sleep thinking that your cost structure is going to look like it did in 2016 and 17. It may, but if it doesn't, what does that mean for your business?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Jason. I don't want to say as a hobby, but when I'm driving around from in different areas that I'm working, and it may be 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half in a car. I don't know, this may sound weird. I love listening to economists and different people speaking on business. I mean, I just love it. I really it. And I mean, it's, what is it, $5 trillion we've now printed in the last year and a half. I mean, that's half of what we've ever printed ever in the history of the country, or something absurd like that. And it just, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I don't want to say scary, but it's all right, interesting. I'm be interesting to see how this is going to affect us long term. You know what I mean? As far as inflation, commodities, products, all of that. But interesting. Let's transition into this, Jason. Let's talk about business ownership. Let's talk about running a company. I'd love to hear your perspective. Is this the first business you've owned?
It is, yes. Absolutely.
So 17 years now of running this business. What are some things that you've learned, now that you've had it for almost 2 decades, that you could give some insights, let's say, to somebody that's just starting out, or maybe somebody that wants to own a business in the future? I mean, what are some, I don't know, what is there some generic thoughts maybe about living below your means and having some savings, or having some people that, if you need investors, that have some pockets, or running a business in general, or being aggressive, or just not being passive? Is there any thoughts, things that you've learned 17 years now that, when you were first starting out, you had absolutely no idea from running a business, or how difficult it was, or how easy it was, or maybe how the first, I just know for me, I'll tell you, my experience was, I knew it was going to be worth it because I saw my parents own successful restaurants and real estate and stuff like that for 35, 40 years now. And they could, go on vacation for 2 months over the summer. But that's not how it was the first 10 years. You know what I mean? I remember my dad telling me they didn't take any big checks for 10 years. Everything was going back into the company, opening a new store, or they were just literally just paying their bills. For us, it was more like 4 or 5 years of really, it was very hard because, our business is different than restaurants, where our business is kind of low capital intensive. You could just get a little storage unit in the van and kind of, buy product. Versus a restaurant is high capital intensive, but you open up and you got cash flow. People are, you start having some record weeks, months, and you can start paying a lot of stuff off. What was your experience like in starting a company?
Well, looking back now, I would say I think the number one thing I would say to someone is expect volatility, right? Your results, even if you're really doing well, I think are going to be inconsistent. from year to year, depending on, the landscape, the economy. There's so many moving factors to, what will dictate your end result. And that's okay, right? Because the volatility is what provides the major upside. It may also provide some very difficult years where you really have to buckle down and try to scrape through. But, for me, it was, I want to have that upside uncapped. And when you take the leap to do what we do, that's what you're doing. While we're in the edible oil business, we have the freedom to build it, excuse me, in the shape that we think is right for, what the market is looking for. And it doesn't have to look like any other edible oil business, and it doesn't have to look like any other business, period. We can create it out of thin air. And that's where the uncapped upside really comes from. But you're going to go through some valleys along the way, even in the best case scenarios. I mean, you can look at a company like Tesla, right? I mean, is anybody doing better than they are? But, multiple times in their history, they've been at death's doors. And I think for any business, you're going to face those moments, and don't let that scare you off. Just understand what you're getting into, and know that that's part of the experience. And that's why the upside is there, because the downside is there as well. But it's totally worth doing, and I, it's given me my biggest highs outside of my kids and my family, and in some of my biggest lows. But I wouldn't change anything. I would do it all over again, and I'm still showing up 17 years in, still, trying to take the next step. So I'd say buckle up if you're interested, but well worth it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's why I love capitalism so much. It's the freedom to win, the freedom to try, the freedom to fail. I mean, it's all there. It's all there, and it's just it's a way to test you and test yourself and what you're capable of, and your ability to adjust and lead, and there's so many factors in it, and so I like that. I guess maybe on the same topic, I know that obviously you spoke earlier about, having a business partner in the industry, or in the company, Healthy Brand. Talk about that. Talk about, finding the right business partner, because that's sometimes, not to get in, too much into the details, but I've seen my dad, have some business partners where things just didn't work out. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate, but maybe there could have been, I don't know, some more due diligence. I don't know. It's, communication. That sometimes can be an issue. What are your thoughts on if you're starting a business and you want to bring on a partner, what to look for, or what's made a good partnership for you guys? Maybe like what has led to that? I know for my cousin and I, it's been 12 years now, and we have first off, we're very different, very, very different, which is awesome. Some people may not think it's good. It is very good. We balance each other out pretty well. When it comes to the business, Jason, I'm willing to spend almost anything. If it's computer, buy the best. If it's literally anything, I don't know, like forklifts, Wi-Fi, internet service, I really don't care. I will, and my cousin balances me out where he doesn't want to buy a stapler for his office. You know what I mean? He's like, I'll just borrow somebody else's. You know what I mean? So yeah, a little exaggeration there, but you obviously get my point. Talk about that. Talk about maybe partnership in business. What are your thoughts on that?
It happened very organically, where there was an existing relationship, and we started this other kind of secondary business. So I wouldn't claim to be an expert in going out and sourcing the right partner, but I would say that having a good relationship with your partner, it seems of utmost of importance, because the day-to-day challenges in the business are always difficult and always hard, and there's always going to be disagreements. And if there's animosity, from the get-go, I think it's going to be very hard to overcome. I'd say one of the things I'm very proud that my partner and I have been together for 20 years here, and really, outside of a couple things here and there, we've been, very cordial throughout the years and very professional. But I would say, I think one of the keys in that is giving each other space to, be who you are. One, and two, make mistakes, and three, just not be up each other's so much. Everybody's going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to get things right, get things wrong. But I think if you and your partner are showing up every day with an honest and right mindset and both looking to achieve the same goals, you're going to work through them and have success. But you also have to give each other space to go through that process, because it's difficult and the mistakes will happen from both of you, and I think you've got to realize that going in.
Yeah, I like that. Just having that mutual respect, I think, is very important. Value each other's opinions and thoughts, and being able to compromise, like actually have discussions, reasonable, mature adult, you know what I mean? Like, let's not be petty. Let's not be teenagers. Let's not, squabble and, hey, you know what? Well, let's put it behind us and move on. I like that. I guess maybe just wrapping up, Jason, I guess I'll leave it to you. Any thoughts, any thoughts that you want to maybe give to the audience about your business, what you guys are doing, the future, entrepreneur wise, anything about, I don't know. I mean, it's been an interesting 12 months. I'll just say that for our industry.
Yeah.
It's I don't know directly how it's affected you guys, but it's been an interesting for the whole industry, for the food industry. I feel like a lot of people have taken a beating, and it's we've had to be flexible. We've had to figure some stuff out, and so I guess my recommendation, before I kind of let you close is, like you said, you have to be able to adjust and be nimble and make changes and moves, because, prices are going up. You have to figure out how to make the business survive. A business is like a person, like a baby. You have to take care of it in order for it to continue to grow and thrive and make you money and keep your employees happy, so then they can have a paycheck to go pay their bills and their mortgages. And so it's just been an interesting, for sure, year for us. Any thoughts, suggestions going into the future for the next 12 months from your perspective as a buyer, as a entrepreneur, obviously in our industry? Anything you want to maybe tell the audience or the operators out there that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I would say let's be prepared for the unexpected here. I think, as someone said yesterday, I think we're all expecting a boom here for the next, however long. But as this person said, we don't know if it's going to last for 10 minutes or 10 years. And I think that's one of the challenges as we look to run our businesses, invest in our businesses. And so we've really got to stay on top of it and really I think that makes all the more important the decisions that we make within our business, as we go forward, because to me it is very unknown. And so we here are very focused on looking at all parts of our business, trying to learn as much about them, trying to grow as much as we can, not being afraid to look for the answers outside the company, because I do have a feeling that we've never had more access to qualified people and information in our lives in the palm of our hands. I would suggest that there's a great website called Go Catalent, where we have been able to connect with experts in the accounting space, in the finance space, in the commodity space. And we've been sourcing, relationships there for about 5 years. And the level of people that are available to work with are just, Harvard and Yale and you and Duke and you name it. I'm blown away every time we put a problem up there. The level of people that are willing to come, work with us. But never stop improving, and the incremental improvement in 3 and 4 and 5 different parts of your business has exponential impacts that really are what we're all trying to gain. So, if we can be a help in any part of that process, please drop me a note. My email is jthomas@healthybrandoil.com. If you're interested in some of the literature that we put together on the commodity markets, I have basically a daily note that goes out, just giving you some of the highlights. I'm happy to put you on that list. Or if there's a question about anything else, happy to connect and help and have a conversation and work together with customers, potential customers, and be part of this little community here.
I love it, Jason. Like you said, if people want to reach out, you guys have a website, you got a LinkedIn, you have a Facebook. Reach out to these guys. Jeff and Bill with B&A Foods are the broker here in the Carolinas. Great product. We've used you guys for many, many years. And what was that other website you just mentioned about getting some help?
Yeah, Go Catalent. I can email you that, Nick, and so you have it. But we've connected with food safety people, as I said, accountants, and those parts of your business that maybe you have questions on that aren't big enough to bring it in-house. You can work with very high level consultants for not a lot of money, and I'm talking expertise you lay in bed thinking about trying to get access to. It's excellent. I would highly suggest it.
Impressive. Well, Jason, I know you're super busy. You've got a massive company that you're running. I know that you guys, like I said, the research and due diligence and connections that you have up in New York and throughout the country and throughout the world. Honestly, like I said, I was thrilled when Jeff even said that you'd be willing to do this, because I know the size of the business that you're running, and it's very impressive. And I love it. I love it. You have an amazing success story, where, never owned a business before. I don't know if you ever thought about it before, but, right people, right timing, right situation. And, but you know what? You took advantage of it, because a lot of people have opportunities in front of them. They can't see it, but there are opportunities all around you. Just so you know, it's just a matter of being prepared and ready for them and then executing. Because I'll be honest with you, I mean, there's ideas are I don't want to say pointless, but everybody has ideas. We all have ideas that could work. It's a matter of executing those ideas and making them, into fruition that actually counts. And so, thank you. We'll post below all your information and your website and your link. Go find these guys, Healthy Brand Oils. Great company, great products, great service, and definitely experts in the market. So appreciate it. Have an awesome rest of your day, Jason, and we'll talk soon, brother.
Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.